I think as we used to say, or people still say now, God's voice, but God speaks to us, and talking about words of knowledge and prophecy. Back then, it was really the norm, and it was incredibly normalised. I think we used to attend things where there was a prophet from Kansas, or that had been to Toronto. And very often the people at the front with the microphone after the worship that I'd sort of discussed in one of those other videos, there would be a talk, and then there would be the words of knowledge or prophecy. It was a really odd experience for me because I desperately wanted to be chosen initially. I really wanted to be picked. And then it got to the stage where my sort of Christian friends would spot that I was often picked. I'd always have these sort of words that were very specific and quite exclusive. And I think what was so vitriolic about the process was it created a serious power imbalance in a kind of service point of view. And my faith became so entwined with what other people either thought or would say to me. So then the service gained a weight that was way beyond just worshipping God. It became a place where I guess my future was read. Now, when you read the Bible, you see that throughout it, and certainly with the big characters and their stories, God is often speaking into their future. Saul gets so worried that he, raises Samuel from the dead to speak to him by using witches. There's something that's in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, God speaking is a really important part, but we kind of turned it into a Disneyland. Like, hey, I'm going to get on the prophecy roller coaster and see what happens. I want to do a loop-the-loop. And so what I thought I would do, because one of the things, like there were my churchmanship when I was church personship when I was a kid was comprised of two different halves. The first was kind of more traditional church, Anglicanism or Baptist when I was younger, and then the slightly crazy, odd house church that my parents left. And these two things seemed fairly separate. So in my head, I kind of thought, right, this Anglicanism is a fairly safe bet, and it's, I can trust it in a kind of a theological way, in a relational way. I could date a girl that wasn't a Christian with the Anglican Church. In my friend's church that went to the house church, they'd be thrown out the youth club for dating a girl or a boy that wasn't a Christian. It was really quite different. But what normalised this kind of prophecy, prophetic word, words of knowledge thing was Soul Survivor again. So I would have been 15 in 95, and that kind of safe environment of the Anglican Church, which I just mentioned the distinction between, the lines started blurring when Pilavachi and co. started using this kind of word prophetic, and demonstrating that. People would always have a word of knowledge. That would often be about healing, which might be another one to talk about because I've had all sorts of conversations about that one. But it was also about essentially people's future, words of knowledge. And what I've began thinking was, how can I kind of contextualize this and look into this more again from my perspective? And I thought, when I did Soul Time, the Soul Time course 25 years ago, we were encouraged to give each other words of knowledge. So I think we were separated into two groups maybe, and we were each asked to pray. And then I thought maybe we prayed for each person, and then we'd give them the word we thought God was saying. Went right round in the circle. So I've got a tape somewhere in the house, and I've got no idea where it is, with words of knowledge for me that was recorded. And I'm sure part of the kind of roller coaster theme park aspect of it was that Pilavachi was around and he gave us a word too. So I'm going to hunt out this tape, maybe use this camera to show me looking for a tape. The next challenge will be, I don't know if I've got a tape player anywhere. So I thought what I'll do is go for this, be quite open with what was said to me, and personalize it in some way. So I think this is worth thinking about and talking about too, because this is a really important and intrinsic part to an environment that just wasn't fully healthy. And the more that people keep saying, but there was good. Of course there's good. But as everyone's questioning Anglicanism at the moment, the Church of England, I think we need to be questioning the whole lot. And that's kind of why I'm doing this. It's not to be destructive, but it's literally to question. So, and I can do that with credibility because it's my story. So that's the relevance. So I'm going to look for this tape. Wish me luck. Well, it's the end of the day. I started this morning. I found the tapes. I had about 20. I didn't have a tape player. Asked all my neighbours. One of my neighbours had one. He kept it in his garage, and I think it was totaled. But I picked one of the chaps that lives here with us up, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've got a Porter studio, so I've hooked it up to the hi-fi back there, and I'll play some of it." Spoiler alert: Mike Pilavachi doesn't give me a word of knowledge on tape, or a prophecy. But a few other people do. I've listened to it all, so it's not as if I'm going to listen to it now. That's just boring for you to listen to. But it was nice for nostalgia. It was 25 years ago. The words are fairly general, vaguely biblical, or kind of just fairly fluffy. I think a waterfall's mentioned. But let me just play it. Just for it, I'll listen to it. I'm going to turn this microphone that's above my head to listen to it a little bit more, and yeah, you just have a listen, and then I'll quickly do a recap. Then we're done. So hang on one sec.
Needed. He could mend something. He had the shop, and he had all the resources available. And I think you're somebody who's got equipped in lots of different ways. And I think you're almost a multi-gifted person, or God is developing different gifts within you. And I think you're somebody that people will come to because you're able to help them in all sorts of ways. You can always turn your hand to anything. And I think that's why God's gifted you, to be a sort of Trader Jones. And if you yourself haven't got precisely what's needed, you've got enough resources to patch them up to make something work and be used. So I think just be available to how God wants to use you. And I think you're somebody who will not be fazed by anything that you're asked. If somebody says, "Could you come and do this?" you'll think, "Oh, I've never done that before, but I'm sure there's a way through here. I'm sure God can equip me and use me in this way." So I'll stop there for the moment. There were some other bits.
Yeah, so I sensed there's a pastor there that you're someone who gets alongside others, and in Ephesians 4 there's the pastor teacher, those two are linked, and I sense that you've got that, but it's probably more of a getting alongside others and particularly explaining things to people who are worried about something or other, that you're very good at helping people along the way in a kind of one-to-one situation as a pastor. I also sense that you're a worshipper, and I don't know whether you're involved in worship or music in any way, but I just sense that there's a real worshipper's heart there, and that's something that the Lord delights in you. Is he involved in music? Yeah. Praise God. That's great.
Yeah, just to say, I always had pastor for you.
Just had a picture of a steep hill, really, and that you can see that you want to go to the top, and it's like, oh God, maybe a bit just of frustration, just wanting to go. I want to just go straight up. I just want to go there, but actually sometimes feeling like, God, are you just leading me on a kind of a windy. I don't feel like I'm going anywhere. This is where I'm meant to be going, and you're taking me over here. What's going on?
So, just to sort of paint the picture, that was 25 years ago. I was 18. I'd spent £2,500, given up a year to do a discipleship course with Soul Survivor. The first two people that spoke were strangers to me, pretty much, I think. And the second chap that speaks is really encouraging me in the stuff that I want. I want to do worship. Oh, I'm playing worship. God's going to affirm me, and I'm here. And he sees that. I'm sure I would have been elated after that message, thinking I'm in the right place. God's with me. I'm in, the promise and what I thought I would be doing, I would do. What continued there was I got invited into the worship team, on the Sunday morning. Matt Redman and his team would be playing, and I think I sang backing vocals maybe once or twice. And rather than getting invited more, it just stopped. And I remember one of the course leaders, called Colin Brooks, I remember him saying to me, "Sam, I don't think you're ready for this." And actually that would have been an experience that, I've experienced throughout all of my church life, really. Opportunity being dashed by individuals that have authority or power. So, and actually when I speak with other people who have, whether they're Christians or involved in other faiths or whatever, that seems to be a really common trope. Now, that's something I'm quite used to. I make videos and films and things for a living. I get rejection all the time. But within this context, people are speaking at me like with words of it's not advice, it's what they are suggesting are words from God. And sure, we may well have had a chat beforehand saying, measure it and don't just take it all for granted. But that environment was incredibly charged. I was the centre of attention, which was, a lovely place to be. And people saying what God was saying to me for the future. That set a context where nearly anything could be said to me, whether it was in that environment or whether outside of it, where I knew that what I was being told was dictating to me what I would be doing. And just as I spoke about earlier this morning, if I can remember, about, being chosen in a service, stand up, what's your name? Sam, God's got this plan for your life. Whether it was that, whether it was in this environment in Soul Survivor, which again, for me was a really central place. I wonder if I'd taken that same culture into some of the youth work I used to do, and if any of the now adults, but young people then remember me doing it, I'd love to hear, because that culture was just so normalised to me, and I don't think it was very useful at all. I think at worst, it was damaging. At kind of medium, it was cheapening. At best, where's the fruit of this? So my question would be, people that are my age, that were involved in church 25 years ago, if you had words spoken over you, did they come to fruition? People who are giving words now to people and using prophecy as part of that roller coaster ride. What's your motivation and reason for doing it? Because I don't necessarily think it's to glorify God. And you might just be going through the motions because that's what you do. But I think we've really got responsibility for one another here. And the way that I can remember and listening to that again now, I'm just wondering where the value is. Anyway, here's another one done. Please like and subscribe. The comments in here are incredible, and really making me think about, different people's contexts, different people's viewpoints, and that's what this is about. As we as we examine what Anglicanism is, as we examine what Evangelicalism is, we've got to continue thinking, well, what is the environment? What can church look like that glorifies Jesus? And gosh, I'm still considering that tape I just found that I've not listened to for years. Nothing was a massive standout at all, sadly. I was really hoping I'd think, holy moly. Although there was one guy called David, and I don't know if I can say, I don't think I can get done for this. David said, and I heard him, and he said, I can see like a scooter in your life, or maybe a motorbike. And it's about the fuel that you put in and the jump that you make that's really important. And I thought, motorbikes. Anyway, thanks everyone.